Good morning, everybody. We're ready to start. Oh, hi. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, Deputy Mayor Paul.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor James Pasternak. I'm the Chair of North York Community Council. We have quorum. I'm now calling meeting 21 to order. Welcome, everybody. Although we were meeting in different locations today, North York Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. It's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga, the Credit. Today's meeting is being held video conference and being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. If you're registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of the speakers can be viewed online by visiting North York Community Council page at toronto.ca/council, clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the city clerk has provided all materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. Are there any declarations of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? I don't see any. We have two councillors online. I don't see any. And may I have a motion to confirm the minutes from a meeting of January the 9th, 2025, moved by Councillor Cheng. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 15 items on the agenda and some new business to introduce. Item 21.1, 93 Mildenhall Road, a series of addresses on Lawrence Avenue East, zoning bylaw amendment. I will hold that for speakers. (21.2), 104 to 114 Finch Avenue East, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment applications, decision report. We will hold that for speakers. 21.3, 2810 to 2816 Bayview Avenue. We will hold that for speakers as well. (21.4), a series of addresses on Glazebrook Avenue, residential demolition application. We're going to hold that for speakers. 21.5, series of addresses on Finch Avenue West, residential demolition application. I do not have speakers on the item. Councillor Cheng? This is item 5, series of addresses on Finch Avenue West, residential demolition applications. You can hold the item down if you're not sure what you...
No, I'd like to move with conditions.
Number option 3?
Yes.
Okay, option 3 is moved by Councillor Cheng. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 21.6, 115 York Mills Road, application to remove a private tree. We do have speakers on the item. Item 21.7, 1171 and 1173 Avenue Road. Series of addresses on Avenue Road and Briar Hill Road. Extension of part lot control exemption application. Councillor Cole. Staff recommendation moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 21.8, 1100 Briar Hill Avenue, designation of fire routes, amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes. Councillor Cole. Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 21.97 St. Denis Drive, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes. Counselor Burnside?
Move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 21.10, 799 Sheppard Avenue West, construction staging area. I'll move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2111 Edgecombe Avenue and Otter Crescent, traffic calming, speed humps. Staff recommendations moved on number 11, assuming drawings are attached. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 12, Varna Drive, parking amendments. Counselor Cole?
Move staff recommendations.
Staff recommendations on number 12. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 13, Parkhurst Boulevard and Cable Gate, all-way stop control.
I would like to move staff recommendations, please.
Counselor Chernos Lynn is moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 14. Nymark Avenue, traffic calming speed humps. Counselor Carroll, I just the clerk is whispering in my ear that you wanted to defer this item.
Yes, I didn't have a chance to see the design drawings before this agenda went public, so I'd like to defer it for a month. I just want to make sure these speed humps are in the right place.
Okay. Designs are accompanying this this request? Are there?
They are, but I get a chance to see them before they were public. I need a conversation with staff before we adopt.
Okay. We're deferring.
Just for one cycle.
Okay. Deferring to the next scheduled North York Community Council meeting, 2114, Nymark Avenue. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2115, assigning ceremonial name of Heroes Way to Canterbury Place, North York. Councillor Cheng, this is a report from General Manager, Economic Development.
Chair, can I just speak very briefly and move the motion? Yeah, so this is very significant for our community, and I really thank community member Diane Broom, who I see sitting there, who has not just championed this with so much heart and effort, but has made annual, if not monthly or weekly, visits to our first responders to provide encouragement for them and their support of our community. In particular, what our first responders did during the Yonge Street tragedy. They really rose to the occasion. They made our community safe at a very critical moment, and some of them endured long-lasting trauma because of what they saw that day. In fact, I did hear from one officer that one of their colleagues has not yet returned to work because of the difficulty of what they encountered that day. So these are our heroes of Willowdale and our city, and I am so pleased to support this, that they will now every day when they leave their stations see that our community is celebrating the heroic work that they do every day. So I fully support this ceremonial naming of Heroes Way to Canterbury Place here in North York. Thank you, Diane, for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. And did anyone else want to speak on the matter? No? Okay, we're good. Councillor Cheng, you move the staff recommendations.
Yes, that's correct.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 16, honoring the late Michael Mostyn by naming a landmark or site in York Center. So we need one motion to introduce, one vote to introduce, and then I will speak very briefly and then move the recommendations.
Happy to move introduction, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yes, so thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. All those in favor in adding it to the agenda? Opposed? That is carried. This was really a sad and tragic passing of Michael Mostyn, the former CEO of B'nai B'rith Canada. He had about a year-long battle with cancer, fought valiantly, and at the time he was in remission. It was really wonderful to see him back at work, active in the community. We went for lunch. We saw him during the high holidays. He was really a visionary when it came to advocacy with B'nai B'rith Canada, fighting for human rights for all groups, a leading voice in fighting anti-Semitism for the Jewish community. He rose basically through his work, also through social outreach. He expanded their food bank, their clothing exchange and drive. He made sure that their social housing buildings were in top-notch shape, did a toy drive for those less fortunate, and did a number of different programs in their buildings to ensure that seniors did not face isolation that often happens in old age. He leaves a loving wife, Ella, and two children, as well as parents, Sheila and Alan Mostyn, all very active in the local community. He was at City Hall many times, deputing in front of our standing committees, advocating for better policies when it came to fighting racism and anti-Semitism in the community. He came to many of the celebrations at City Hall, Jewish holidays, Israel flag raising, and Holocaust remembrance. He really was a source of inspiration to thousands of Torontonians and Canadians. In this motion, we're asking city staff to identify one or more sites for us to decide on, it to be named in his honor. We'll certainly miss Mike Mostyn. He always picked up his phone. He always called me back. We worked together on a number of initiatives, and I know many at North York Community Council knew him as well. Councillor Carroll, Councillor Cole. I don't know if I've left anyone out, but we all knew him, and he will be missed dearly. So, all those in favor of adopting the motion? Opposed? That is carried. 2117, I'm going to withdraw that. I'm not even going to ask that it be introduced, so we can withdraw it. Not introduce it at all, but we will touch base with staff to make sure some of the pieces are in place so that it can be brought back at the next community council meeting. Next one is Wilson Avenue Safety Review. Just need I'm going to introduce a motion to have it introduced, and then I will speak very briefly on why this is here. All those in favor of introducing it? Opposed? That is carried. For a number of reasons, which we were hoping staff to identify, and solutions, the piece of Wilson Avenue between Bathurst Street and Wilson Heights is a particularly dangerous set of roadway with a long history of collisions, of fatalities, and serious injuries. In recent weeks, we've had actually 2 deaths on that roadway, but we've also had serious injuries at the corner of Wilson Heights and Wilson, as well as the death of a child some years ago. And of course, there was another death of a car ran over the sidewalk curb and hit someone who was working at an outdoor patio at one of the restaurants along Wilson Avenue. At the same time, we've had very serious collisions. One recently in which a TTC bus was rammed and 9 people were injured, as well as almost life-threatening injury of TTC buses coming out of the Wilson station and turning left onto Wilson Avenue. So we want to take a closer look at that. There's enormous pressure to take a look at this roadway and see what can be done. Complicating the matters you see in the motion are the 401 off-ramps that both double lanes that come onto Wilson Avenue, and one of the most recent fatalities occurred when a dump truck came off the westbound 401, came off the ramp and killed an 81-year-old pedestrian crossing. So that is why that is here. All those in favor? You want to speak to it as well? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pasternak. As you know, my ward borders onto this to the south, and it is a very, very challenging area for safety for pedestrians, especially the high number of seniors in that area, and also the very obtuse configuration of the east, I was on it this morning, I think, the eastbound 401 ramp at Bathurst, just south of the bridge, which is extremely narrow, not well signed. We've had, as James said, I remember when we had trellis gardens there with the seniors home next door, it was just horrendously dangerous. So this got a long history of poor design by the province of Ontario and its off-ramp and et cetera. So it does need, I hope the report focuses on the south of the 401 also into my ward. And I just want to mention the most recent death was the 8th death by dump truck in Toronto in the last 2 years. 8 people have been run over by dump truck, construction trucks in this city. And I put forth a number of motions already, and nothing's been done, to basically require all dump trucks to have motion sensors and cameras on the dump trucks. How many more people have to die by dump truck before the provincial government does something to require these trucks to have the safety features that almost every vehicle has? Because, you know, in Councillor Chernis Lynn's ward was the first death by dump truck at Erskine and Yonge, where a caregiver who lived in my ward was trying to cross the street. She got run over by a dump truck making a right-hand turn. And on their way to the dump truck was on her way to the many development sites we have at Yonge and Eglinton. So and we had another one in Councillor Fletcher's ward where a Metrolinx dump truck killed somebody. This is a regular occurrence, and the people of Toronto have got to wake up to this, that especially when they start the 401 tunnel, the number of dump trucks that are going to be in the middle of Toronto, it is going to be horrendously dangerous, especially when the drivers cannot see pedestrians below them. So I think this motion should include an examination of the need to basically require dump trucks to carry those safety features, which they do not and are refusing to do so because they're in such a great hurry. They don't want to spend a few dollars to save lives. So I just want to include the emphasis on the need to do something about these killer dump trucks, which are on our roads 24 hours a day. And in fact, they're on Bathurst Street today. You couldn't get up and down Bathurst Street from Eglinton all the way to the 401 because our snow clearing is beginning, and there's maybe 30 dump trucks on Bathurst Street right now. None of them have safety equipment on them, and because they're contracted out by the City of Toronto. So I just hope that we include an examination of the dangers of these dump trucks that are not equipped with safety equipment, and when they're on our roads all over the City of Toronto, 24 hours a day. Thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I'd be happy to hold the item down if you want. Oh,
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I could speak to it,
Oh,
if we're going to hold it down, just in case I end
yeah,
up having to leave.
I was just, if I can just finish my sentence, Councillor Cole, if you
Sure.
want to have that amendment about the dump trucks added on to there, I'd be happy to hold it down, and we can move your amendment. I would also suggest you enclose the 401 eastbound ramps off of Bathurst Street, just south of Wilson, in which I've had to run for my life on several occasions over the years, and it triggers constant complaints. I'd be happy to include those as well. So,
hold it down.
but I do have, Councillor Carroll wants to speak on the item as well.
I wonder if I could, Mr. Chair. I'm a bit challenged here. The intention of looking at the problem with dump trucks, really important work. I just I have to say that I don't think these two things go together. Here in Community Council, asking our transportation staff to do a safety review and looking at the traffic planning of it all and making those proposals is something they're directed to do, and we're delegated to do that. Making a policy change about entering into we need some dump truck design and vehicle change, that's policy work, and I would suggest that that's really a motion that should be going to works or should be going through council. But I know that because of some of the recent incidents, it would be a very welcome motion at an infrastructure committee, and those are the policy staff that are better positioned to do that work, and urgently we should send that motion there. But a safety review is something that staff sitting in your room right now, it is regular work for them. And so as not to delay getting your transportation staff safety review for the road design, adding this policy piece to it could delay the work. And so I would suggest that we adopt today the safety review and add those ramps on the south side by all means, but that's the work that our community council transportation staff engage in. And so I would suggest that these two different parts are on different paths, and we should respect that. That being said, we know that sometimes these studies don't get done immediately because they join a queue. But you have, in fact, councillors, adopted something that may help this situation. I moved a motion that literally no one was paying attention to during the budget process. We have increased the number of traffic wardens. There was much news and fanfare, but traffic wardens, we think of them as being downtown. I moved a motion that passed handily, because I think probably because no one read it, based on a study that we have coming out of studying the efficiency of transit and the safety of our transit vehicles, that says where our safety issues are near highway ramps and where our delays of transit routes and where our bunching of traffic happens most frequently is approaching ramps of highways. They've done a study, and that is a glaring problem. And so I moved a motion asking that since we're deploying so many more traffic wardens and they're funded in this budget, the transportation prioritize looking at those problem areas. And I would suggest that you just described one in this motion, and Councillor Cole's area, the study that we adopted to finally deal with that stretch of Eglinton that approaches the ramps onto the Allen Expressway is another one of those places where the challenge of both safety, transit timing, and congestion is happening because of the entrance to those ramps. So we funded that. We've moved that. That is work that the staff in charge of traffic wardens now need to look at. Safety reviews is something that community council people can look at. Making policy around dump trucks, I think, needs bigger fanfare and should be happening citywide and therefore in an infrastructure committee. Those are just my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carroll. Look, Councillor Cole, I'll leave it up to you. If you want to advance that, to move your motion, I would say it has two parts, really, to include that on-ramp, that eastbound 401 on-ramp at Bathurst and Wilson. I think that needs rumble strips and some better pictographs and so forth. The policy piece, I personally don't have a problem with it. I understand it could get bog the whole thing down, but that would simply be referred off to the general manager. It's your call.
Yeah, if I just a point of information here. what staff is going to tell me is what staff has told me already. They can't do anything because it's the provincial and federal government that regulate the vehicle safety measures. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to get into policy because, like they told me already in my motion, we can't do anything. So I know the answer already, but at least they can ask the feds and the province to do something. And secondly, as you know, Councillor Pasternak, you've got a major construction project going to happen on the southwest corner of Wilson and Bathurst, another the 30-story tower there. And you can imagine the number of dump trucks are going to be in that corner. And then I've got another arena development, hopefully is going to occur to the south of the 401 on the west side of Bathurst. So we're going to have two major construction sites with dump trucks in that area, adding to the mayhem. So that's why I want to keep on trying to wake people in Toronto up to this dump truck deaths that is occurring because of all the mad construction with no controls over what these guys drive and how they drive, and they have no training. I can go on forever about dump truck deaths, but anyways, I'm going to include that.
Well, look, I mean, when we do procurement at the City of Toronto, we have conditions and requirements. And maybe we shouldn't be hiring dump truck companies that don't have safety measures. So I'm surprised staff are responding in that way because we do have leverage. So how would you like to proceed? Do you want to just vote on the motion as is and
I'd like to add those two amendments that are
okay,
about the.
so let's hold this item down. And Councillor Cole, could you work with the clerk on those two amendments?
Yes,
and
thank
then
you.
we can discuss them. Okay, so back to item 1. It's 93 Mildenhall Road and some addresses on Lawrence Avenue East. I'm looking for Corey Horowitz as a deputant.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, thanks for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good morning, councillors, chair. My name is Corey Horowitz. I'm an urban planner with Dialogue, acting on behalf of the Toronto French School for the application for you. I'll try and keep this very brief, and I would like to make myself available should there be any questions from councillors. So the subject site is 3 existing detached houses owned by the Toronto French School at the northeast corner of Lawrence Avenue East and Mildenhall Road, which is just west of Bayview Avenue. The properties are all adjacent to the existing Toronto French School main campus, and all properties in the main campus are located in one contiguous block. Each of the subject properties fronts onto Lawrence Avenue East. So the proposal is strictly a change of use to permit administrative office uses ancillary to the French School. So this is to meet TFS's operational need, basically additional space for administrative staff without the need for any new construction. So there's no proposed change to the built form or the exterior of these houses or properties, and there would be no new students or staff resulting from this proposal. And so the proposed zoning bylaw amendment will actually maintain the residential detached zoning, but it will add a site-specific exemption for the office use to be enabled for existing Toronto French School staff. And further, there's no additional parking required or proposed as part of the proposal, and no significant traffic impact or other impact is anticipated for the neighborhood. So really, the intention is for the staff that will occupy these houses to continue parking at the main campus surface parking lots as they currently do. And overall, there's going to be very minimal, if any, impact on the existing conditions. The intent is to maintain the character as it is today, no visual changes, no built form changes, and just allowing Toronto French School some additional space and flexibility. And I'll just add lastly that the official plan neighborhood policies do permit and actually encourage this type of small scale use, specifically permits retail, service, or office uses such as this one in neighborhoods. And I'll leave it there. And as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions or clarifications from councilors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Any questions for the deputant? Yeah, Councillor Chernos Lynn?
So, good morning, Mr. Horwitz. Just to clarify, we're not talking about the staff who move into these buildings from other places at TFS. Their parking is not being moved to this area. They're going to stay parking where they were. So there's no expected traffic pattern change or anything like that.
Yes, thank you for the question, and that's correct. The staff that will occupy the houses currently park at an existing surface lot on the main campus, and that's what they'll continue to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for the deputant? Questions for staff? Speakers? Councillor Chernos Lynn?
I'd like to move staff's recommendation, please.
Staff recommendations moving on item 1, 93 Mildenhall. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2, 104 to 114 Finch Avenue East. We have speakers on the item. Is there a Kwan Kim online? How about a Hasina Lookman? Great. You can be a star for 5 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Councillor Chang, hello, how are you? And to all the other councillors, thank you for giving us this opportunity. So I live at Pemberton Avenue, which backs onto the proposed building that is we're discussing here. We have opposed this build from the very beginning. We have met Councillor Chang a couple of times. We have written to the planning department more than 15 times asking for a meeting, which has not been given. We are opposing this on several reasons. The first reason is that this building will block sunlight to practically the entire street on Pemberton. We will have half to 3/4 of the block living without sunlight from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I want to note that the City of Toronto itself has acknowledged in previous planning cases that sunlight access is a public right. And yet, the planning department here is ignoring its own standards. This is an issue. My second issue is the right to privacy. We have small houses with children and teenage girls. This building will look directly into the bedrooms of our daughters. Anyone here who has a teenage daughter, you understand that risk. Why are we agreeing to this? Privacy is not a luxury, council members. It is a right. And yet, this development threatens to strip away the right from every family on Pemberton Avenue. That is unacceptable. I want to talk about the traffic hazards. So when we had the second community consultation, we brought up to the planning division that the data that was submitted by the builders was fake, incorrect. We also provided at that point to the planning department proof of the accurate data from the police. They dismissed it, right? This is not okay. Pemberton, the Willowdale, and Finch area is a deadly intersection. Sit there and add an additional 500 car trips. The intersection where they're planning on building this building, the entrance intersects with a bus route, intersects with a bicycle route, and intersects with a very small pedestrian walkway. If we agree to this, if the councils agree to this, you are essentially agreeing to take responsibility for any accidents that happen there. And we have just heard about accidents happening in other parts of the city. Do we really want to add more to that? My next point is the legal infractions and the bylaw violations. So we have written about this ad nauseum to the planning committee, and they have not responded, right? There are the sun and shade violations. Mid-rise building guidelines, design guidelines have been violated. The proposal violates the city's own urban design policies that require access to sunlight for homes, sidewalks, and public spaces. This does not happen in this thing. The traffic and transportation safety violations. This violates Toronto's complete street guidelines and the city's traffic regulations. The data used, again, we've sent this in detail in writing, but in short, the data used in the traffic study was inaccurate. The residents showed the real data to the planning committee in the second community consultation, and it is the view of the residents that this has been dismissed. I want to talk about the environmental and tree protection violations. And council members, our city has spent over $20 million on making sure we have green coverage. This property is now saying it's okay to shove that 20 million bucks under the carpet. Why are we spending money on building these laws and then shoving it under the carpet for builder profits? It does not make any sense. And why are we raising taxes when we are wasting money like this? This property is a violation of the 40% tree canopy goal, which North York is trying to do very, very hard, right? So this cannot be approved, really. Otherwise, you are saying it is okay to waste that $20 million and all the rest of the money that has been spent on creating these bylaws. It also has structural issues. I have 30 seconds. There is a noise and light pollution violation. It does not meet the bylaw 2024 EC 9.5, and that is also an issue with the, it does not meet the seismic responsibilities that building needs to have. On several grounds, this building is not appropriate. And I want to just say one more thing.
If you could wrap up your
Okay.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up. So we understand that the city believes there is a shortage of housing. Right now in North York, there are 452 rental units available. There's 270 units available for sale, under 1.2 million. There is no urgency in this, councillors.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the deputant? There are not. Anyway, thank you for your remarks. I'm looking for Carlo Tamayo. Ms. Tamayo, thank you for joining us. You find.
Good morning, Community Council staff and members of the public. My name is Carla Tamayo. I'm a planner with Bousfields, representing the owner and applicant. We've reviewed the staff report and we agree with staff's conclusion that the development is appropriate and desirable from a planning and urban design perspective and that it represents good planning. However, very recently, following the issuance of the staff report, Councillor Cheng had approached our client about making 2 key changes to the proposal to address community concerns. The first change being to increase the amount of ground-related non-residential GFA along the Finch Avenue frontage, and the second change being a request to remove our access from Willowdale Avenue and instead provide access to the building from Finch Avenue East. So our client has studied these 2 requests and has determined that it would be possible to accommodate both of these requests. However, in order to do so, there would be some implications for the draft zoning bylaws recommended by staff that will need to be further reviewed. So we'd be pleased to work with staff and the councillor to accommodate the requested changes and address any potential implications in time for the March City Council meeting. We have approximately 5 weeks between now and City Council, in which time we'd like to work towards these changes in order to maintain the original approval timelines. Given this, it's our request that the matter be forwarded to City Council with direction that we continue to work with staff to accommodate the requested changes, alongside the provision of a supplementary report. We also want to take this opportunity to express our appreciation for staff's assistance at this point, and we're excited to continue working with the city to bring this project forward. Thank you for your time, and I'll be available for any questions. As well, I had registered to speak alongside Peter Smith from Bousfields. He is available online if he could be given the opportunity to share the 5 minutes and answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? I just have one. When you registered, did you identify yourself as the applicant's legal counsel or consultant?
As the planner from Bousfields.
You're the planner?
Yep.
Because there's nothing indicating that you're the representative for this application. It would have been nice to know. Okay. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, we'll call one more, thank you. We'll call one more time for Kwan Kim. So he should go, last call for Quan Kim. Okay. Do you know who he is? No, him. Okay. Sir, you're registered with the clerk? Okay. If you could introduce yourself, you have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Shaq, and I'm the owner of 115 Pemberton, and then which is the backyard of my house will be the 11 stories going to be built, proposed, and that will really affect our whole family. First, we have a very nice backyard, very nice area. Willowdale is a big, good name from Toronto. And then if they start building 3 stories, I was told it takes more than 6 months to build a house, 3 stories, and they're going to create a lot of dust, noise, and everything, which affected my life, and then also my grandson. So I would just say that please don't let it happen to have 11 stories behind my backyard, and going to affect a lot of people. And I didn't know that I have this chance to voice out, and I just don't want to see 11 stories behind my backyard because I pay for it. I need, if all the noises going to create, like if you build 11 stories, you're going to build, the foundation need deeper down to the ground, and then going to create more time and more dust and more noise. I just would like this can be treated fairly. I'm sorry about my English, but that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Is Peter Smith available? Be the last deputant. Peter Smith?
Yes, I am available.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm a partner with Bousfield, so I work alongside Carla Tamayo, who just addressed council. I'm primarily here to answer any questions that you may have. One thing, though, that I think is just worth highlighting, given the deputations to this point, is that this is an application that is fully in accord with the new updated mid-rise guidelines, which were adopted by Planning and Housing Committee back in December. And so the 11-story height relates to the width of Finch Avenue, and as well in terms of the massing of the building, the stepping and setbacks and so on, it is essentially fully compliant with the mid-rise guidelines. So that's an important part, both of our approach to the site as well as staff's analysis of the site. And I thought that that was worth highlighting given some of the comments that had been made by the deputants to this point. Be happy to answer any questions regarding that or the intended process going forward.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll bring it into committee. Questions for staff? Councillor Carroll.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do have questions for staff, and it's about the recommendations with respect to parkland. And I suppose the reason I'm asking the question is because, we're now in this place where we go through the approvals process for buildings, but there's really no guarantee in the current economy as to when they'll start building. So I was just wondering if there's, I don't know if it's private and you can or you can't, but it looks like this is definitely going to be an off-site parkland contribution. Are the discussions with the applicant that are to the satisfaction of planning about, is there a particular off-site location in mind that works for this neighborhood? Is there timing attached in, or will there be in the eventual settlement that lead us to make sure that whatever is the intended parkland here actually can come to fruition? Maybe you could help me with that.
Through you, the chair, we would hope to work with the applicant to secure an offsite dedication in close proximity to this development so that the patrons of this of this residence would be able to use the parkland. There are areas that we would focus on, especially those that may have been identified in the Renew Sheppard secondary plan. In terms of timing, we would hope that we would be able to have the park conveyed to the city with our regular timing, which is typically prior to the above grade building permit. So between now and
Right.
then, we would hope to work with the applicant to secure something to our satisfaction.
Okay, so we can envision it, we can talk about it, but if they're not ready to build and get above grade, we can't act on that until that point.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
So the fallback at that point, if the opportunity that you had discussed, you had envisioned doesn't come true, then what we're looking for is cash in lieu going to the Parkland Acquisition Fund.
That is correct.
Okay. And just one other line of questioning. So this site, these houses, because they face onto Finch Avenue, are in the Finch Avenue East secondary plan. How long have they been envisioned as mixed use in that plan?
Through the chair, how long have they been mixed use? Was that your question?
Well, proposed that they could be mixed use. In the secondary plan, they're in an area that said mixed use, you can apply to mixed use there. How long ago was this plan put in force and effect?
So those properties from 104 to 114 Finch have been designated mixed use area C specifically in the secondary plan since it was adopted roughly 30 years ago in the 90s.
Okay. So I guess the surprise for the community is they thought that meant townhouses, but now it can mean an 11-story building. Is that more recent, or really because this is Finch Avenue, there was always the ability to look at something of this size?
The ability to look at something of the size, so a mid-rise built form, has that ability has expanded recently. I would say probably in the last few years, especially given the updated mid-rise guidelines and other work that the city is doing with the housing action plan. So that ability has certainly expanded since the secondary plan was adopted.
Okay. And last question, Mr. Chair. And Councillor Chang won't mind me asking this question. What's the visitors parking sitch here? I see 20 short-term parking spaces above grade. Is that's the visitors parking for this building?
So those 20 spaces are actually short-term bicycle parking spaces. The visitor parking count is 11.
Okay, for how many units?
That's 201 units.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other questions for staff? Councillor Cheng?
Thank you. Through the chair, so we are looking at a outdated secondary plan that was made 30 years ago that currently designates how many stories for these properties?
Through the chair, that's correct.
What does the secondary plan designate in terms of height or number of stories currently for these addresses?
So the mixed-use area C designation permits 3 stories, but these properties are subject to a site area-specific policy, so they are permitted 4 stories.
So We are actually overriding, your recommendation is to override the secondary plan due to the mid-rise policy. Is that something that is in our policy, that we, in the hierarchy of our decision-making, we have provincial policy, and where does secondary plan versus a mid-rise policy, where do those sit between, in terms of prioritization of how we make decisions?
So through the chair, what I'll try to do to answer that is, lay out that obviously the secondary plan, as you said, is about 30 years old. Since that time, there's been a number of provincial changes that have come forward, as well as city changes. I think one of the things that we failed to mention during our answer, it's in the staff report, is that this site is also within a PMTSA, right, which is one of the provincial protected major transit station areas, so it's 650 meters away. So as you know, the provincial policy direction has been to intensify around transit stations. So that is one level of provincial policies that's directing us to intensify. I think in addition to that, you have our official plan policies where we have this site identified as a mixed-use area site, so it's designated for development. It's also a site that is on an avenue, which is one of the areas in our official plan in terms of the urban structure that is anticipated to allow for growth as well.
So just because I don't want to
Yep.
run out the clock. So basically, we're saying that secondary plans are not actually the true north compass in our decision making because of other factors, including provincial policy. I'm sure there's a pressure of what happens if it goes to OLT and cities' mid-rise guidelines, even though officially we would not let a mid-rise policy circumvent a secondary plan, but it is because the MTSA that is happening.
Well, I would say that's partly correct. I think what you have to also evaluate is the date in which the secondary plan has been there in existence. If we had a secondary plan that was brought up to date with current provincial policies and legislation, then we could stand behind that and saying that meets our current policies. Similarly, as an example, I would say that the Renew Sheppard study that we just adopted at council, that was brought in place to conform with the current provincial policies. This secondary plan is outdated.
So there are probably other outdated secondary plans across the city. So we're saying that in all cases, there's other policies that are now potentially going to be overriding these secondary plans.
I think we would have to evaluate the secondary plans and the applications on a case-by-case basis.
So I want to talk about sun shadow. This is going to have an impact on immediate residents, on their access to sunlight. What policies govern our protection of residents in this area? Because this is obviously a huge concern as we add more density.
Through the chair, we have a number of policies in our built form section of the official plan that speaks to adequately limiting and looking at ensuring that built form provides access to sunlight. The proposal has been, follows the updated mid-rise guidelines in terms of setbacks and heights, and the shadows do impact the lots to the north from 918 to 318. The proposal fits our guidelines and our policies.
So what are the guidelines? So we're saying morning sun, a little.
Councillor Chang, you can squeeze in one more question,
just
but
for clarity,
this is a wider conversation.
What is that? Is there an hours? You have hours of sunlight that we are going to protect, or what is that policy definitively with regard to sunlight on adjacent properties?
We look at it as a kind of cumulative assessment, and as I mentioned, we look also at the impacts of public realm, so the shadow impacts to the streets and our parks, this proposal meets the guidelines and actually has a sunlight proposal that moves the shadows within the limits of our guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chang.
Question?
Councillor Cole?
Yes, I'd just like to tag on to Councillor Chang's questions. If this community council votes against this application because of some of the issues raised, what happens if we say no?
Through the chair, I would suspect that the applicant would then appeal the application, and then once you get to the OLT, we will be faced with having to defend a decision where staff have obviously recommended approval for it. And as we have kind of said up here today, we do believe that the application does conform to our official plan in terms of the emerging direction as well as the provincial policies.
Okay, so, and I'm sure the applicants or the deputants have no idea what the OLT is, and that's the Ontario Land Tribunal. They make the final decision. So if it's rejected here, they would then go to this provincial body, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. The other question I had, at any of these Ontario Land Tribunal meetings, are you aware of any cases where the Ontario Land Tribunal rejected an application because of these issues about shadows and sunlight?
Perhaps through the chair, I'll see if our solicitor would like to weigh in since she sees many of these.
Through you, Madam Chair, as my colleague pointed out, there are more robust policies in place sometimes for shadowing on parks and public spaces. There's no principle that says that the ordinary resident is entitled to protection of sunlight, and we would be very unlikely to be successful putting forward a case on that basis.
So you are a city planning staff lawyer, right? And you represent the city at the provincial land tribunal. That's your job, right?
Through the chair, that's right, Councillor Cole.
And could you repeat again what would happen as what has been your experience when these issues about light and shadowing come before the provincial body who makes the final decision? What has been your experience? So, you know, the public, the residents don't have really the time to understand all these provincial changes. So what usually happens, what's been the pattern at the provincial Ontario Land Tribunal?
Well, what I can say, Councillor, is that there's a real thrust from the province to approve housing, and that our experience is that it can be very difficult to oppose proposals, and the idea that shadow would be enough, the shadow on residences would be enough to oppose a proposal is very unlikely. We would be very unlikely to succeed in such a case, especially given that staff has already come out in favor of the proposal, but even notwithstanding that, it would be a very difficult case to make, and we would be very unlikely to succeed.
Have you ever been party to any of these Ontario Land Tribunal hearings where the Ontario Land Tribunal has rejected a development proposal for 11 stories?
I can't, through the chair, I can't say that I have. Of course, context is everything. So, you know, given the context in a PMTSA on a major street like Finch, it would be a very challenging case and very unlikely to succeed.
Again, more difficult language. What's a PMTSA? I'm sure nobody here understands what a PMTSA is unless you're a counselor, planner, or somebody that has the time to find out what all this complicated language is. What's a PMTSA?
Through the chair, it's a nomenclature that's been provided by the province. It stands for Protected Major Transit Station Areas.
So in those protected areas up to 800 meters, they can basically build as much height as they want.
Through the chair, I wouldn't exactly say that would be 100% correct. I mean, I think there is a policy direction to intensify. The city has the ability through its official plan to still identify areas for growth, and, you know, certainly we have done that with respect to many areas around transit stations. This area, as I said, is an avenue, and so the height of 11 stories does match the right-of-way width of Finch Avenue.
Okay, but again, has it been your experience where there's ever been an 11-story development application rejected in a PMTSA by the Ontario Land Tribunal?
So through the chair, I'm not aware of any, but of
Okay.
course, the city is quite large.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for staff? So I just have a couple of quick ones. So, I mean, the shadowing has come up a couple of times with the deputants and with questions for staff. A shadow study was done, and usually we assess impact. And how would you generally sort of summarize the impact of shadowing on local properties, surrounding properties?
So yes, through the chair, a shadow study was submitted with the application, and we assess the equinoxes, so March and September, as well as we look at June and December. And the times that we look at specifically are March 21st and September 21st, and the properties to the north are in shadow from 9/18 to just part of their backyard is still in shadow just at the end of 3/18. And then during June, so the time of the year where the sun is higher, there is minimal impact to the rear yards.
Okay, and obviously this was presented during the public consultation, so. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, the 11 stories seem in this era quite small. And I know the secondary plan was touched on, but for my information, how high could they have gone on this site?
So through the chair, given that Finch is a 36-meter right-of-way, the 11 stories is right on that height.
Okay, and when it comes to entering or exiting the building, is it on Finch or is it on one of the side streets?
So through the chair, the entrance currently is off of Willowdale to allow for a driveway access off of the rear, and there is loading and parking coming off of Willowdale.
Okay. Yeah, the local councilor's whispering some advice here. So one last question, angular plane. Was an angular plane required or even entertained? I know it's not a requirement anymore, but was it entertained for this site?
So through the chair, as you heard earlier, we do have the new mid-rise guidelines that were adopted back in December. The angular plane requirement has been eliminated.
That's what I thought. Okay, I'm done. Any other questions for staff, or are we going to speakers? I guess we're going to speakers. Councillor Cheng, did you want to lead off? You have some motion.
I have a motion.
And then Councillor Carroll? Okay.
It's a two-part motion.
Okay, so let's put them on the screen, and then you can talk to them.
So when we had our consultations, it was clear that the exit to Willowdale Avenue was something that would create a problem. It's turning into a turning lane that has a bike lane and only one lane of traffic there. And because of its proximity to an intersection, it would result in a lot of areas of conflict that could arise if people were trying to cut across to turn eastbound on Finch from Willowdale, or if they wanted to turn right and go straight down Willowdale, and they'd have to cut across. And we know that during rush hour, this is a very intense street. Willowdale is not just a minor street. It actually does have significant traffic and accidents, as many residents have mentioned. So I know that a lot of our policy, generally we don't want buildings to exit on main roads like Finch, but in this case, because of the location, that exit into a turning lane with a bike lane is really not ideal. And with staff support and with discussions with the developer, they are redesigning, and it is a significant redesign of their plan in order to remap it to exit onto Finch. But I think that will be a significant improvement on the impact on the local community with regard to traffic impact. And I am grateful that the developers are willing to take that on. We've also talked about applying their community benefits towards increasing the parkland dedication. We have Pemberton Parkette and Bishop Park that are in that area that would be ideal to expand if possible. They are also amenable to increasing the number of visitor parking, and to work with the adjacent community members on their desired fence height. Because, it was pointed out to me that when you're at the 11th story, you're likely not looking down, you're looking out. So you're not really going to be looking into people's yards, but the immediate privacy can be helped with a increased height yard. I know that, and I want to thank Hasina and Jack and the whole community. I know that you've poured your heart into this, and I'm committed to arranging a further meeting with staff to talk through all your many questions, because I think it's important to have that understanding of, because we definitely are not approving things that are against code. We hold, our development community to a high standard for the safety and well-being of our city. So we will make sure that those things are addressed. But this is an example of the pain of a growing city, and where the provincial policies easily override our policies. So we have a delicate balance that we're trying to strike between acknowledging the lived experience of our residents, but also the shadow of the Ontario Land Tribunal. In Willowdale and Yonge Street, we never had a 50-story building. We've only built to approximately 30, and I think 30 is a very nice height on a Yonge Street because it's not overbearing. You still see a significant amount of sky, but there have been projects that went to OLT and set a 52-story standard now near Finch Station. So this is the future we're looking at. I don't know who set it at a 50-story as the ballpark of this is a good quality of life. I personally would not want to live on the 50th story. If you have a heart attack at the 50th story, you just can guarantee that EMS is not going to reach you as quickly as if you live closer to the ground. And so, and I've asked fire and EMS, what are the impacts of this greater density city that we're going to be building? Because a lot of the approvals, especially in my area, of the growing 40s and 50s that are not yet built, what is the impact on many things, including mental health, on quality of life, on potential of knowing your neighbors, as well as safety? I think these are things we have to be proactive about looking into, and not just building and hoping for the best. So I think, my colleagues and I, we all feel for you, the residents. I think everyone here tried to ask questions because they know how painful and difficult it is to see this change that is coming. And especially the immediate adjacent neighbors for whom that quality of life will be impacted. And we can't, no one is denying the truth of that, but we don't want things to go to OLT. That's generally what we try to avoid. And there's this delicate balance that we're trying to strike. And so there's significant work. So just to sorry, Hasina, there's no time to speak after this is where we can talk afterwards, but there is no time to formally.
Councillor Chang, if you wrap up, you're over 5 minutes.
I'm just going to wrap up, sorry. Yeah, so this is a change that we have to walk with our residents and make sure they have the clearest information along the way, and I'm committed to doing that. But just to clarify, this is not an approval because there's still work. And so the client, the applicant has committed that before March council, they will significantly be redesigning their project. And so we will keep the residents in the loop of what the redesigned building looks like and what it will be. So we will be staying in touch with Hasina and your community. So these are
Thank you.
just-
Thank you.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Councillor Cheng, I believe Councillor Carroll also wanted to speak on the item.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. I did, and you know, I really understand. Councillor Cheng is right. We're all asking these questions because we feel your pain, but we also know that more along these lines is coming. Finch Avenue East has been an avenue for a long time, and the change, particularly around transit areas, the change in provincial policy puts us in these positions. This has been an avenue for a long time, but in fact, we have a proposal that's going to come to us later this year. We asked at council that there be more work done on it, but it's going to add other avenues because the provincial policy statement 2024 really does put this emphasis clearly on our plate. And you know, a lot of people, you don't really think about the things that we're saying in our newsletters and the things that the planners say in their presentations. You come to a presentation meeting, we had this conversation at our neighborhood reference group last night, looking at your watch, thinking, why is he talking about these planning policy statements? I just want to see the building they're applying for. But it's important that we remember that PPS, that provincial policy statement, and it's now policy statement 2024 that takes all of the growth things and all of the changes and puts them into an updated statement, now looks at that thing that we were ranting about, that it's not just a few 100 meters in front of transit stations. Now it's an 800 meter circle around major transit station areas such as Finch, and this is squarely in that circle. And so the game has changed, but I very much support Councillor Cheng's motions, and it puts me in mind of a situation where we asked for a privacy fence or alternatives. I'm such a nerd that I actually sometimes pull into a lot years later to see if the thing we moved happened. And way over on Keel Street, when Keel Street first began to intensify, it was Councillor Ojamari's ward at the time, 2780 Keel Street. Same thing. I can't remember if it was 10 or 11 stories, but it was backing right up against the backyard of the interior neighborhood street. So it was devastating to those neighbors, as we're hearing from the neighbors here. And so what was moved was a privacy fence. And then when they talked about what do you mean by privacy fence, it started to become clear that it was that in and of itself closer to the homeowners than the building itself was maybe going to be, if you built it to the right height, it was going to be really difficult for people. And so the or alternative kicked in, and what was already in site plan was a landscape plan behind 27 Keel. And again, I think about a couple of years ago, I happened to be in the neighborhood, and I was killing time while my grandson was playing basketball over at Downsview Secondary, and I thought I'm just going to turn into the back of that building and see what the landscape plan turned into from that thing we approved years back. And trees and landscaping was definitely the route to go. That was the or alternative. But it meant that the backyards just had a continuation of whatever vegetation was in their own yard. And it seemed a much better buffer for this now 10-story building that backed onto their lots. And I think we're going to have to hunt for those opportunities in this new provincial policy box we find ourselves in. We got to look for those. Those are the livable quality of life, livability pieces that we can add. Because whether we like it or not, we're being told to build this housing, but our job in our wards is the deal breakers that we put in place like the change in access and egress here. You're very lucky neighbors because the next building along Avenue, we won't be able to add another access and egress directly onto Finch. If this one is direct, you're lucky to have got that in this early application. So that's a nice deal breaker move that we can do to make Willowdale safer and better for you and not so close to your neighborhood. Landscaping and whatever we do behind to make your backyard, those are the things that we add. That's the value add to this provincial policy statement that we can only do locally. So as much as we don't want to, we have to support this building, but I heartily support Councillor Cheng's motions as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any other speakers on the item? No? Councillor Cheng, we have your amendments. Put them on the screen. That is a tall ask between now and
is a tall
council,
ask, yeah.
but let's see what can happen. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended.
No.
Oh, sorry, there's a second one. Okay. Second motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 3, 2810, 2816 Bayview Avenue. We have speakers on the item. Lori Payne. Welcome, Ms. Payne. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members of North York Community Council and members of the public who have joined this public meeting. My name is Lori Payne, Chief Operating Officer and EVP of Development for OGDC. OGDC is the applicant for the 2810 to 2816 Bayview development. It's a partnership between Altera and Osmington. We support staff's recommendations as set out in NY 21.3. My remarks will be very brief, but I'm happy to answer any questions. The proposed development at 2810 to 2816 Bayview reflects the objectives and the policies of the Renew Sheppard Secondary Plan, which was approved by Council in December 2024. We recognize that the Renew Sheppard Plan and this proposal will introduce change into this neighborhood. The process of change is often hardest for existing residents, as we've just heard, and we will do our utmost to minimize disruption. Working with Councillor Cheng and staff, we engaged in additional consultation with the community as these changes were coming forward. Based on the feedback we received through those discussions, we will be more than doubling our visitor parking requirement over the bylaw requirement. We will be engaging in additional community consultations as the project moves forward, and we will be working with the city to secure parkland in the area. We've submitted a letter to Community Council confirming our commitments and understand there will be motions to implement these. On behalf of OGDC, Osmington, and Altera, we would like to thank Councillor Cheng and city staff for the effort they have put into bringing this project forward. It has been an exceptionally smooth and productive process, which was completed within 8 months of our initial zoning submission, in part because of the foundation set by the Renew Sheppard Secondary Plan. We would also like to thank the local community association and community members for their feedback and the spirit of collaboration that they brought to the discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Barb Garbins.
Good morning, staff, councillors, and members of the public. I live in the neighborhood directly behind this project, specifically at 39 Granley Road. The vision of the city has designated my house as parkland, along with some neighbors of mine to the south and to the west. So in respect of this new designation, which actually took place in December, I would like to ask that the construction developers redo the sun study, because now we have limitations on shadowing on our properties. I don't believe that has been redone. I'd also like to say that our neighborhood is not in favor of this development. It's 42 stories, and it is going to disrupt and pretty much destroy our neighborhood. Should it be approved, I have a number of suggestions and recommendations and comments submitted by our neighbors that I would respectfully ask council to consider. The first is that the neighbors on the east side of Granley from 48 to 58 Granley Road, who will be backing directly onto the development, have a privacy fence that is not less than 10 feet, and that landscaping is on the homeowner's side implemented so that they have privacy and backyard enjoyment. A comment was made as to the slope of the property from the fence line. The slope basically tends to start from the driveways of the houses, and it's fairly significant after that, but right at the fence line, the slope is not that high. There might be a small gradient, but it's not that high. It also is suggested that the land directly on the other side of the fence, which is part of the project, does not have use for large gatherings, parties, barbecues in the summer, such that the homeowners are able to maintain a reasonable amount of peace and quiet. I also want to just ask the question about the protection of the residents when the construction, if it does begin, the stability of the soil and the site, so that the foundations of the houses that are abutting that project are not destabilized. During construction, large vehicles would be coming and going through our neighborhood, disrupting the peace of the homeowners and possibly their safety. Our group would like to be involved in discussions regarding the proposed construction vehicle traffic management during this period, so that we can work within our community to advise, alert, and protect residents. Also during this period, workers will be coming and going. In large part, our neighborhood actually doesn't have a lot of traffic parked on the streets. People who visit our neighborhood are usually using the driveways of the houses to which they're visiting. But there is a building just adjacent to this development site that has been sold. There may be 3 or so tenants left in the spot. So there's about 20 spots available for workers. Of concern after completion and occupancy is a significant number of visitors that will be in our neighborhood. What I'd like to suggest, and I know that there's been a revision to the visitor parking, but I would like to suggest that another 50 spots be designated as visitor parking rather than resident allocated parking spots. And the reason for that is that if there are not enough spots for visitors, they're going to be parking in our neighborhood. And we actually will have no choice but to ask for no parking restrictions and signs throughout. Those spots can actually be sold at a much later date depending on what the frequency of traffic is in the neighborhood. The Renew Sheppard Plan East indicates that there will be a bi-directional cycle tracks along Bayview Avenue. It's worth noting that this study also identifies a bikeway along Irvington Crescent, which would connect to the future physically separated cycling infrastructure along Bayview. With the introduction of cycle tracks on Bayview and Irvington, the mix of increased vehicular traffic from the new development and cyclists using the new infrastructure will raise safety concerns. Has this aspect of the Renew Sheppard East study and this development proposal been reviewed with regards to this bicycle infrastructure? Finally, a word about the old infrastructure. Does the capacity of the sewer and drainage system meet the requirement to accommodate heavy rainfalls and the additional burden that at least 2 skyscrapers are going to impose on the neighborhood? If there is flooding due to increased demands on the system, whose responsibility is it to deal with the problem? Are the homeowners stuck with it? The city, the developers? We would like to see a report as to the viability of the existing infrastructure to accommodate this new development. Thank you. I welcome questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Janice Chu? Janice Chu?
Yep.
That's my
Hello.
concern for both.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Hello.
Hi, you have 5 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Gina Still. I just live behind the proposed site. So I'm here today to kind of express my concerns for this development plan. So first, the neighborhood impact. So this 42-story building behind Detached House is going to be a drastic and abrupt change to the neighborhood. This extreme height increase will cast large shadows, reduce sunlight, and fundamentally change the character of our quiet neighborhood. And for residents living on 48 to 58 Grenier Road, which are single-family detached house right now, and this 42-story tower will be overlooking our backyard windows, raising very serious privacy concerns, as Spark mentioned. And this proposed building site is currently occupied by just only 4 houses in a row, a very narrow strip of land. So there's no space between our backyards and these building. So how can this project actually comply with the setback requirements outlined in the city's tall building design guidelines? A very big question mark here. Second, traffic and parking concerns. So the plan only includes 7 visitors parking spaces. This will likely push visitors to park on nearby streets, for example, like Grenier Road and Ivington Crescent, leading to congestion and safety risks, especially for children and seniors. And there's no steps taken right now to prevent overflow parking in our streets. The main vehicle entrance and loading access are planned for Ivington Crescent, which is very small residential streets with no sidewalk, directly behind our houses. So this actually raises a very serious safety and noise concerns for our community, considering we have a lot of kids and seniors living in this neighborhood. And surprisingly, there has been no traffic impact study to understand how this influx of cars will affect our local streets. So last but not least, from a city perspective, I just really don't understand that why are we planning to build more micro condos as they are currently in low demand. The proposal includes 540 units, averaging 30 units per floor on a very narrow strip of land that currently only accommodates only 4 houses. So if addressing housing issues is a goal, we should not build more micro condos that no one wants to live in or buy. So I'm here to urge the council to reconsider this proposal until these concerns are fully addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. And I understand there's a new member of the family, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy. Questions for staff? Councillor Cheng.
So just want to echo the question of the deputant about sun shadow impact with the designation of parkland in the secondary plan. Has a revised sun shadow impact study been done specifically around the parkland?
Through the chair, in the last submission, we received a sun shadow study. The shadow study illustrates, as we mentioned before in the previous application, we're looking at March and September equinox. It only lightly shadows where would be the parkland in the morning. So the shadow study does not actually illustrate the designation of the parkland, but we know it from the secondary.
So the shadow study illustrates that the impact on the future parkland is acceptable within the policy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through the chair, yes.
And as we consider this is a significant height, are there any policies about transition? When we have detached homes, backing onto tremendous density. You know, 11 was something people are uncomfortable with, while 42 is 11 on steroids. So what is the policy to ensure good transition for surrounding community members?
So through the chair, dealing with transition, it could happen in a number of different ways. It could be through setbacks. It could be through the heights of the various structures like the podiums. In this situation, we have accounted for setbacks to the west, providing for a 12.5 meter setback to the west, also a 12.5 meter setback to the north. And then we have also provided decent podium heights of 6 stories, so that kind of brings the scale of the building more in line with the adjacent neighborhood. I think also to keep in mind is the area to the east or to the west is obviously going to be an area in transition as a result of the Renew Sheppard study. So that area has been designated as a mixed-use area, so that area will transition over time, and we'll probably see additional buildings in that area.
And if we were to refuse this application and it went to OLT, what is the likelihood that OLT would reject 42 stories in this specific site in consideration of the Renew Sheppard secondary plan and the PMTSA policy?
Yeah, so through the chair, a number of things. Obviously, with Renew Sheppard, this site or this area is within the transit station area designation. So that's one thing where we have anticipated that there are going to be tall buildings. Basically 45 stories at the corner and transitioning down. So this is 42 stories, so that would be in line with that policy direction in Renew Sheppard.
Is there currently a bike lane plan for Irvington? So I heard the deputy mention.
Through the chair, in the Renew Sheppard plan, conceptually there is a bikeway, but there's no detailed design for it right now.
And we have provided or protected for a bikeway along Bayview Avenue.
Mm-hmm. And there was a concern about sewage capacity and risk to nearby properties with regard to flooding. What is being done to mitigate that? What are the requirements of builders to avoid breaking the system?
Through our chair, our engineering manager can try to answer those questions.
Good morning. My name is Maria Illich. I'm the manager of development engineering. Through the chair, the site currently has split drainage. Upon development, that drainage will all be contained within the site. So we have strict wet weather flow guidelines that they have to comply to. And the applicant has submitted a functional servicing and stormwater management report that actually shows how that will be mitigated. So all that drainage from the site will be contained, and only a certain amount of flow will be allowed to leave the site. Sanitary water storm capacity is all available, so we have no concerns with that.
So is it the standard now, this is my last question, Chair.
Yes.
Is it the standard that all tall buildings now have to build their own cisterns to receive that storm water, and then it's flowed out gradually into the system as capacity allows?
That's correct. Actually, every site has to contain the flow. So from a big storm, like a 100-year storm, has to contain the flow from up to, to a 2-year allowable. I know that's a technical matter, but it's, if there's a lot of runoff from the site currently, it's all contained to a smaller rain event.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Councillor Cheng.
I have a couple of motions.
Okay.
Oh,
did you? Okay, Councillor Cole?
Yeah, just wondering, is this within the provincial MTSA or PMTSA?
Through the chair, that is correct. It is within the Bayview MTSA.
So it's in the Bayview MTSA, so that means they can basically build as high as they want.
I think, given that we have done some substantial planning here through the Renew Sheppard study, we have anticipated where that growth would go and would align with the provincial direction.
Okay. And how many units, apartment units in this proposal?
Through the chair, there are 540 units proposed.
540. How many of these are affordable?
At the moment, there's none that have been negotiated to be affordable.
Have the residents raised any concerns about the lack of affordable units in this proposal?
Through the chair, in the 2 community consultation meetings we've had, there hasn't been discussion about affordable units.
There has or hasn't been?
Has not.
So nobody's raised the fact that you're building 540. Is this have they decided as condo or is it rental?
I don't think it's been decided at this point, but likely condo.
So all we know is 540 apartments or units, and none of them are affordable.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. There was one deputant who wasn't on the list who is here and would like to speak. Michael Chong, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for having me today, a member of City of Council. I'm here. We are like my name is Michael, and I work as an oncologist. Taking care of cancer patients, and we are a stakeholder in this because we are one of the property that's directly in contact with the current development west of the condo site. And I'm talking here today to hopefully ask the council member to reconsider and oppose the 42-story development in the back, just like in the east of our home. I think like the previous point one, the previous project was opposing the 11-story building. This is a 42-story building right at the back. And while we understand the densification as part of the city vision, according to the new bylaw that's just passed in December, the residents most affected by the development, we feel like our voice has not been adequately heard. And while I feel like a guideline should serve for the citizens, and we do know that like having a very tall condo, just like before the study and like the sunlight study, you do know that like right at our backyard, 42 stories condo like will be like really impacting our quality of life, privacy, reducing sun exposure, and creating an overwhelming sense of encroachment. And the backdrop to the 12.5 meters is just for the tower itself, but to the base of the building is actually 9 meters. And like I'm not a solar scientist, but like I feel like just like common sense, like we do know it will impact this. And the adjacent street, which is where we live on Granlia and the Irvington, they are currently a small, quiet road without sidewalks. 2 cars can barely pass each other. So like, usually like they have to really like do this whole dance, like when 2 cars having to like meet each other. And currently in the current plan, the entrance to the condo will be around Irvington, and introducing such a large car-centric development will increase vehicular traffic, substantial safety risk, particularly to young family, as we are a young growing family, and my neighbor also have young children. And like, I think this will kind of impact and increase the risk of having traffic accidents and increase pollution. And ultimately, the high-rise threatens to undermine the comfort, safety, and character of the neighborhood. But I feel like you probably have heard all of this concern before, but like from a different perspective that I want to introduce to is like during the development, the taller the building, the longer the development will be because they have to build taller building. And I do have concern with the multi-year long development that will be happening, aside from the usual concern of like noise, privacy, and also just safety due to workplace accidents. And I feel like the close proximity, which is like around 9 meters, which is less than here to there, from such a tall building to our home and dwelling, will also introduce significant exposure to dust, which is unavoidable. You can block having large materials falling to buildings, but like with dust, it's just unavoidable and part of construction. And as part of some of the particulate, including cement, gravel, and sand, it will contain silica. And this is like what's relevant with my experience as cancer doctor who has been treating people with lung cancer. People who are exposed to silica, they can develop lung condition called silicosis. And according to Cancer Care Ontario report from 2017, more than 50% of lung cancer associated with silicosis is associated with construction, and we are going to be essentially living adjacent to it with nowhere else to go. And a lot of this condition, when I see the patient with like incurable lung cancer due to like silicosis related lung cancer, which is very similar to mesothelioma, which is caused by asbestosis, this is very heartbreaking. And I implore the City Council to reconsider and reject the proposal at the current state, because like with this, like, you know, our family will be exposed to this. And I do worry about like the community in the future, that like many of us will have prolonged lung condition and as well as lung cancer. And similar, I think all of us are here because we care about our family and community. And I implore the City Council to consider the people instead of development. As you know, there are many condos that's currently in the market for a long time. Do we need more condo? We currently have a very strong community
If you could wrap up,
dwelling.
please, you're at 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Oh, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation. I was just wondering, have you ever contacted your provincial member and expressed these concerns?
I have not because I have not because as usual regular citizen, I become engaged with this as I learn through the process. But like, you know, I have been obviously busy with my professional life, taking care of cancer patients. So I have not, but like, you know, I think that would be something that I would be interested in doing.
No, I appreciate that. I can imagine the incredible life-death situations you face as an oncologist, so you wouldn't have much time. But do you know if any members of the neighborhood have ever met with the provincial member who basically voted to allow this type of density at these stations?
I'm not sure, but like my neighbor Barb can attest to that. I think they have been in contact, and you know, I think they have been voicing their concern. But you know, I think like they probably try to maximize the land use to be as tall as possible, right adjacent to like really low-rise residential area.
So you know that if this is turned down by the city council here, whether it be here or at the city, that this would go before the provincial government to decide.
I have become aware of that since in this meeting. I don't know what that will entail, but I feel like the current development in the current shape is untenable.
Okay, so you're aware that you can still contact your provincial member expressing concerns and appearing before the provincial land tribunal.
Now I am aware.
Anyways, thank you so much for taking time, Doctor, and I know you're very concerned about your neighborhood and especially taking time from your critical work that you do. Thank you for taking this time.
Thank you so much, Councilman Cole.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Questions for staff? Oh, we were on questions for staff. Councillor Cole, you had just finished. Councillor Cheng, you had your questions. And Councillor Chernos-Lynn, you would like to have questions for staff? Okay.
I do. I wondered, just based on that deputation around the concerns about silica, has this been studied by the planning department or anyone at the City of Toronto in terms of the risks around this?
Through the chair, I do not believe so. That is not typically one of our study requirements when we receive applications. So we typically have terms of reference for the various reports and studies that have to come in as part of the development applications, and this, what you have mentioned there, wouldn't be one of them.
So just to follow up, I'm not sure, maybe it's not, Mr. Sitt, maybe it's not your department, but I guess I'm just wondering from staff if there's anyone who can shed any light on whether there's been any investigation by the City of Toronto about the environmental concerns on health with respect to silica, or whether this is something that hasn't, this is just not something we've discussed in the past.
So through the chair, I'll turn it over to our city solicitor, but I will say, like, if we don't have an answer, we certainly can try to inquire about it.
Through the chair, I don't have a great deal to add, but my instinct is that this might be something Toronto Public Health has thought about, but much more likely this is a provincial head of power. The health and safety issues that would be created by a construction site are not something I would anticipate that the city itself would set standards on. That would be beyond us. But again, we can get back to you with more of a fulsome answer.
Okay, thank you. I have one other just question with respect to planning, probably the planning department. With the traffic situation with this development, presumably because of the position of this development being near an on-ramp, and there being a barrier in between, like running up and down Bayview, there's really, it's a challenging position to have entry off Bayview. What pieces are being taken into account in terms of safety, introducing this number of new vehicles into a quiet neighborhood streets? Because to me, this is a very real concern. With all the development we're having, I worry about the number of cars I know this is near transit, but the reality is we're going to have Uber drivers, we're going to have Amazon deliveries, we are going to have increasing traffic infiltrating our neighborhoods and these small little streets. So I guess I'm wondering what provisions are being put in place around this, or has that been considered? Thank you.
Through the chair, I mean, I think it's certainly a good question. There certainly will be increased traffic along Irvington Crescent as a result, and there will be new cars and drop-offs that will be happening there. I think over the long term, as I said earlier, this area is expected to redevelop. And as it redevelops, new sidewalks will be put in as part of the overall plan, and there will be also a new street that will be going out onto Sheppard to provide some additional relief to this community. So those are some of the things long term that will happen. But in the immediate term, I mean, there will be certainly some traffic impacts and obviously construction impacts.
Which one?
Are you done?
Is there the ability to widen the roads, or is there any thought being put to widen the roads to accommodate new sidewalks and this kind of new infrastructure planning? And how far out is that we're talking about?
In terms of how far out, I mean, given that the Renew Sheppard study has recently been adopted by council, I mean, there will be some sites will redevelop potentially immediately, similar to this one, but other ones will be much longer term. I think it will in part depend on the community and whether or not properties end up being sold and redeveloped. So that will all happen over time. It's a 30-year plan, so it's not going to be immediate in terms of how the community redevelops. Just with every other secondary plan that we bring forward, it will be a long-term objective. And of course, we've put in the policies in the Renew Sheppard improvements to the community, but again, that will happen over time.
All right, so that was the last question.
Just with respect to the roads widening, is it possible to just have that question answered?
Sure.
Sorry, Councillor, maybe I can circle back around with you on that because I'd have to revisit the Renew Sheppard study to see exactly what is identified in that plan.
Thank
Okay.
you, that's fine.
All right. That's it for questions for staff. Speakers? Councillor Chang?
Thank you. I have decided that I'm going to move this without recommendation, and not because I don't want to set up the hopes of residents. A 42-story building is coming, and I'm not going to be able to change that reality. But I think that our developer, the applicant, has done a tremendous job in terms of willingness to work with the community. They have offered construction management, consultations with the community to ensure that all residents are apprised of what is happening and to work collaboratively. The applicant has also agreed to increase visitor parking, to discuss the fencing with adjacent properties, as well as combining the community benefits towards increasing the parkland dedication. These are important ways that we can improve the impact of this community. And so I just think there, could be just a little more dialogue between now and council. This gives us a little more time, but I want to be clear that, whatever additional changes happen, that it will have no, we live under the shadow of the OLT. That is, our planning staff have to operate within that. And I don't love the idea of a 40, 50-story building future. And unfortunately, that is the future that is being approved around us across the city. And so I wish I could change that, to be honest, but we are a creature of the province. And this is where we really have to amplify our voices. It is an election right now, and increasingly over the last 5 or 6 years through Bill 23, Bill 109, we as community members and as a city have lost our voice in planning decisions. And I think it's similar to smoking. We are not angry about these changes because the impact of them is not immediate, just like the impact of smoking is not immediate. It's many years later, and the policies that we currently are under, in 20 or 30 years, when all of this is built out, we are going to be really struggling, especially I feel in the area of community amenities. So, we lost Section 37 funding, which has been reduced to community benefits, which significantly disempowers city councilors who know what our communities need to negotiate for benefits that can help the immediate community. So every day we are going through, and it's, I think, heartbreaking for all of us here because we go to consultations every week sometimes, and we're hearing from residents the same pleas that we heard. We heard a new mom today come and say, I don't want to, raise my child with a 42-story building right behind my backyard. And another mom who's concerned because she has teenage girls and now this 11-story building. We cannot minimize the life impact that this planning is having on our residents. But this is a growing city, and I understand, we want to maximize the investments that have been made in higher order transit, and this PMTSA's policy is a result of that. But we have to have good transitions and think about the quality of life of our current residents and not just about our future residents. So we are very disempowered, and I wish I had good news, and I really do appreciate Lori Payne's efforts to meet the community, to be very frank and have, ongoing conversations with the community. I think, oftentimes developers are painted with a negative brush, but I feel that the willingness to engage, sometimes with, harsh words and negativity, but to give very honest answers, I feel that that is valuable and much appreciated. So I'm going to move without recommendation, but with the expectation that at council, we will be moving forward with a 42-story building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Cole?
Yes, I think Councillor Cheng, put it in a realistic frame here. What she's faced with, what our planning staff is faced with, and what the residents are faced with. Unfortunately, I think we've come to a point here where I'm getting very disillusioned because I find a lot of very interested, educated, smart people in the city of Toronto have no idea the changes that have taken place in their neighborhoods. They have no clue what PMTSA is, MTSA is, what the OLT is. They have no clue because the province has refused to let them know. They've kept their changes secret. There's no debate at Queen's Park when they've made all these changes. Nobody ever went to Queen's Park and were heard on these changes. But these are unprecedented changes, which basically means that if you're within 800 meters of a transit station, they can build whatever they want. 40, 50, 60, 70 stories is the norm now. So here's 40. I mean, I've got 10 43-story buildings going in on basically a single-family residential street neighborhood because there's a station there. So we've got this policy thrown upon us by the province says one size fits all. Doesn't matter if there's single-family homes, if there's parks. If you're within the 800 meters of the provincially designated transit station, they can build what they want. And therefore, the residents don't even know enough to go and talk to the member of parliament who's made the changes at the MPP. They don't even, and then when you talk to them, they tell my residents, we have nothing to do with planning. It's a city's job. It's a city's mandate. That's what my MPP keeps repeating. We have nothing to do with planning. Yet she voted on all these changes. And so I think it's about time. I mean, I'm going to start voting against these. I'm voting against this development, not because it's not a good developer. It's not because the council hasn't done the work planning. Because we've got to start to say the emperor has no clothes. How can we approve apartment after apartment, condo after condo, when none of them are affordable? The city is prohibited from mandating any affordability in these units. Give us 5 units out of 540, maybe 10, God forbid. No, we can't, because the province has said no affordable inclusionary zoning in any of these buildings, unless we beg and scrape 2 or 3. So that's why I'm opposed to this development, because we've got to start to say no. And maybe the residents will start to ask questions. As Councillor Cheng said, during the election, this is not even an issue. What's the issue in this election? I don't even know. What are they talking about? Health, okay. And talk about health, as the doctor said, this impacts on your health and the long-term health of everybody living in boxes in the sky. And then the most crazy thing about all this is that the city has already approved 180,000 apartment homes. They've already approved all those. They're not building them. So every day we get applications for more that they're not going to build, because they know if they get approvals and they get rezoning, the land value goes up. 180,000 homes been approved by this council, and they're sitting there, and they'll sit there for years, and they won't get built because the condo market is collapsed, but they're still coming with applications because they want to upzone and flip the properties. Who knows what they're doing, but they can't build because nobody's buying. But we're told, approve this, approve this, approve this. Well, build what the hell you've already got approved, for God's sake, rather than asking us for more. I'm voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I think Councillor Carroll wanted to speak as well.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, Mr. Chair, it would be very nice and convenient and politically safe to vote against these developments. But if you voted to adopt Renew Sheppard last fall, then you're kind of putting yourself in an awkward position. Mr. Chair, this is very difficult, but not unexpected. And this particular neighborhood, this group of residents, it's not a secret to these people, because Renew Sheppard was, I believe, the first suburban secondary plan that, because it happened to be in the process of doing its update after 20 years, it found itself in the position that, having opened the door to do that renewal, they were now required to align with PPS 2024. Because if you're doing it, that's what you have to do. Each of these policy pieces, if you're reconsidering them as a city, you need to align them with provincial policy at the same time. And the only reason that the map of what this neighborhood now looks like under Renew Sheppard is not in the report before us today is because that update report is now being appealed. Not being appealed by developers because it went too far. It's of course being appealed because it didn't go far enough. That's the name of that game. And so it will eventually, because various specific sites that had applications on file are in there, it will one day be the map you're looking at. But look at the maps that are in the report. Even if we go back to the 25-year plan, the exact site we're looking at was always mixed use. These 4 houses fronting onto Bayview, across the street from what was already going on my side of the street, they were always designated for potential mixed use. So an application could always come forward. Now, of course, it was much more modest, but only so modest as to put us in the position where it might have been a building similar to the one we just debated on Finch, 10 or 11 stories, maybe a little smaller, but it would still have been an apartment in your backyard. Could have been any time in the last 20 years. Just happens to be coming forward now. And the residents in this neighborhood engaged in the Renew Sheppard discussions. They engaged in that item itself, coming to planning and housing, engaged in the meetings that we held at the Evangel Presbyterian a little further to the east of where they live. And so while these things can be deemed as secrets in some neighborhoods, this is a unique neighborhood in that it's not, because that review has taken place over a long period of time. And even if you were late to the game, you heard about it at that time. And so here we are in this difficult position. Now, the councillor wants to forward this to council without recommendation. I would submit that that's not a bad idea, because there needs to be some affordable units in this. And the reason I raise that is, Mr. Chair, when I first took over the section of the city's map on the other side of Bayview, when Premier Ford enlarged our wards, the Bayview Village Mall application was before us, and Catherine from McCarthy Tetro was at an engagement consultation meeting with the community on that. And new to the area, I said, "What are your plans for affordable housing?" And she said, "Oh, we were told affordable housing is a no-go in this neighborhood. We don't have any proposal for that." I said, "Well, new game in town, that's not going to fly." We want our young people to be able to live near us. We want our kids to be able to contemplate living near us. And so now the Bayview Village Mall proposal has 40 affordable units, some ownership, some rental. That should be in some way, shape, or form in this building, and all of them in this node that is Bayview and Sheppard. Those are the kind of people that very definitely do take transit by and large. So those are the kinds of families that you want to become a part of this project. But we really need to remember what we've adopted. You can say, "I'm mad and I'm not going to vote for this," But if you adopted the alignment with the policy because you're required to, and we are, and if you adopted that thing just a couple of months ago, then we have to help communities understand that that is
You could-
now the planning
wrap-
policy statement that we have to go with. Absolutely, I'm wrapping up.
Okay.
It's our responsibility to
Thank
do
you.
that information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Carroll. Okay.
Hold on, Councillor Pasternak.
Oh, yes, Counselor Burnside.
Yeah, thank
wanna
you. I'll
speak?
be about 30 seconds. I just want to, yes, thank you. I'll take 30 seconds. I just want to thank Councillor Carroll for staying away from the politicking in these discussions. I'm actually getting tired of the rants and everything else. It's easy to complain. It's harder to find solutions. And so I want to thank Councillor Carroll for educating us and providing accuracy in this discussion. I hope that's what we can do moving forward, finding solutions, working with what we have, and improving people's lives. Thank you.
Yes, no, probably the best 30 seconds I have heard in a long time. Thank you, Counselor Burnside. Counselor Chernos-Lynn.
I just wanted to thank Counselor Cheng for her motion to move this without recommendations. I think given the landscape of what happens if this moves to OLT, I think it's incumbent upon us to work within the parameters that are before us. And given that there is a developer who is interested in working with community, and community who does seem to have a strong, active voice, I think this is an opportunity to try and bring in what little community voice we seem to be able to get at the planning process. The community voice has been curtailed by the changes in provincial legislation. And I think one of the keys to good planning is having community working with the local councillor and the city and developers. And so this is, although it's a really tight timeline, I think this is an opportunity to try and make this better than it is. So, and I'm grateful for Councillor Cheng to being open to working with all of these parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chernos-Lynn. So, Councillor Cheng is moving the item without recommendation to council. Councillor Cole said that he would not support that. He wants to vote on the against the application. Do you want to wait till council, or do you want to have a recorded vote now to show you're in the negative? Okay, let's do a recorded vote. So, yeah. So Councillor Cole's recommendation is to defeat to vote against the application. You're moving a motion to send it without recommendation. Councillor Cole seems to be wanting a recommendation against. So my recommendation is to vote against sending it to council without recommendation.
As an expression of your...
Or you could vote against it in council.
I'm not sure. So I have a motion to vote against the application.
Yes, yes, you
So we
can.
vote on that first, then we vote on Councillor Cheng's motion.
It won't. Just vote against. So we're going to have Councillor Cheng's motion first. I would suggest you vote against it because your recommendation is no. However, if it carries, the item is done with. It's dealt with. If you really want to show your opposition, you might want to wait till council. But
pretty much of a.
Mr. Chair, a motion to move something without recommendation is not an endorsement of the item. I think we can just hold the votes. People can decide as they wish.
That's exactly what we're going to do. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Okay, so on a recorded vote, Councillor Cheng has moved the item without recommendation. All those in favor? Councillor Chernos-Lynn, Councillor Cheng, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Burnside, and Councillor Carroll. All those opposed? Councillor Cole. That item carries. Item number 4, 21.4, a series of addresses on Glazebrook Avenue residential demolition application. Jesper Thoft.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mr.
Hello?
Thoft, thank you for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me and see me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, thank you. Yes, good morning to the councillors and everybody else that is joining the meeting this morning. My name is Jesper Toft. I am the co-president for BARA, the Broadway Areas Residents Association. The buildings on Glazebrook are all in our catchment area for our group. The feedback we are getting from the neighborhood is unanimous, more or less, from everybody we talk to. These are 10 perfectly good buildings that are being planned to be taken down prematurely. They were built in the 90s. They seem like they are in good shape. It will be another eyesore in the neighborhood, something that we are familiar with, just across the street on 1837 to 45 Bayview. Last year, a few buildings were taken down there in preparation for another construction. As we have seen, and with the economy, builders are holding back. It will be years before construction starts for most of these. And we've also seen that at Sunnybrook, frankly, that proposal or that area, Sunnybrook Plaza, has been empty, ready for a building for more than 5 years now. Basically a big empty parking lot. We don't think our neighborhood needs any more of that. If the builders are not ready to build, they should, we should use the buildings for housing for people that can rent or whatever. The developer apparently is using a technicality. They need to do drilling for samples for the underground. This is a technicality that we fully don't understand, but we have talked to some engineers in our neighborhood who have said that they truly believe that this can be done by drilling in the backyards or in the driveway area, and the drillers should be able to do whatever study they need to do pre-construction without taking down the houses. In particular, in a situation like this, where we are at least years away from anything potentially being built here. We suspect, and many do, that the real reason that the builder wants to take these down is that to avoid paying property taxes and the no occupancy fee. And this is really what they're trying to do, as we could see across the street where the buildings were taken down, but in fact no drilling has been done and no study has been done yet after almost a year since these buildings were taken down. We feel that the builders should have the option to either, they can rent these units out temporarily until they are ready to construct, or maybe work with the city, the housing secretariat, to allow some affordable housing. There are 10 units here. They are in perfect shape. They were built in the 90s, townhouses. So we are basically asking the city to reject this proposal and work with the developer to allow the to use these buildings for housing as they should be. As we are looking for affordable housing in this city, it just seems completely unreasonable to take something down when we are not ready to build something new. And this is clear that, as has already been mentioned for other proposals here today, that builders are not ready to build. They are simply just getting things approved that they then can work on later. Also, we would like to think that the city's technical department is able to evaluate the claim for the necessity of drilling and removing houses before samples can be done, and will encourage the city to investigate that claim before approving taking these buildings down.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That's all I
All
have
right,
to say.
thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions for the deputants? Thank you, Mr. Thoft. Jeff Cattell from the Leaside Residents Association. Jeff, are you there?
Good morning. Am I
Jeff,
being heard?
okay. Thanks very much for joining us. You have 5 minutes.
I guess it's still good morning, close to noon. Thank you, Chair and members of North York Community Council. I'm Jeff Cattell. I'm representing the Leaside Residents Association, which is the residents association on the other side of Bayview. And as Jesper Thoft indicated, we have gone through a similar request on the east side, which was turned down by City Council the first time, and then they came back at the next meeting, and Council was persuaded to allow them based on the same arguments. As Jesper indicated, there's been no activity involving boring or testing that's gone on that property, and so it would appear to have been a ploy, basically, to get your support. So our submission, which is a letter submitted to you as well as me speaking, is to express our strong opposition to the applications for demolition permits in regard to each of the above noted properties, the 10 properties, which each contain a semi-detached house occupied until recently. We note that the staff report proposes 3 options: refuse, approve without conditions, and approve with conditions, but makes no recommendation among the 3 options. The applicant has not filed for construction permits, hence construction is not imminent, and in fact could be many years away. We are concerned that given the slowdown in the housing market and residential construction activity, it appears very likely that the site would remain vacant for years. The site is located on the west side of Bayview and would become a blight on the Bayview Broadway and the Leaside community. The community does not wish to have a fenced wasteland at a major entrance to their community and for the neighbors behind their properties. So there are arguments raised by the owner, the applicant. They claim that they require demolition of the homes to complete the geothermal testing. We refute that claim. Development advice given to us is that 1 or 2 boreholes drilled in the rear yard should be adequate to understand the geotechnical characteristics of below-grade material. Geothermal boreholes typically extend 400 to 600 feet deep and are always well into the bedrock. 1 or 2 deep boreholes could provide adequate data. And secondly, the claim that testing is required at this time rather than later. This claim is questionable as the owner and applicant has given no commitment as to a construction schedule. So why can it not occur later, just prior to moving ahead on construction? We expect that the applicant's real motive for demolition may be to reduce the ongoing property tax burden. Approval of demo permits will reduce the taxes payable by the landowner, but that does not benefit the city or the community. As a more beneficial alternative to immediate demolition, we suggest that consideration be given to making the houses available for affordable accommodation through a not-for-profit provider as an interim use. So in summary, we recommend that, firstly, the request for demolition permits be refused, and secondly, the housing secretary be requested to consider and report back on an interim use plan for the properties that would make available free affordable housing. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for the deputant? No?
I do, I do, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Burnside?
Yeah, and I apologize. It was extremely hard to hear Jeff today. I don't know if that was just me or if it was his connection. But so I'm just trying to understand. So with this building, are you, like, I'm trying to understand if they were to rent it out to other people and then they decide to build, or at the point they decide to build because they've already got their application done or whatnot, how long would it take to notify people and then move them out? Like, would that not add time to the whole process of the development?
With respect, the timeframes for these projects are multi-year. There are 10 buildings here. It should be possible to work with we're not talking about individual ownership here and having to work with individuals among 10. You would deal with one collective that would manage the properties in the interim. It shouldn't be that hard to manage this.
Well, shouldn't and couldn't and wouldn't are all different words, but like, are you able to provide any insight? I'm trying to understand the issues. I think that's why I'm asking questions.
Well, the
in
issue,
your estimation,
I mean,
how much
respect,
extra time?
That is
Hold
not,
on, I haven't finished my question. Respectfully, how much extra time do you think it would take if they were to go through this process? How much extra time would it add on to the development itself? And if you don't know, that's fine too. Because I'll ask the applicant.
I don't see why it would add any time. These things can be scheduled, phased, and managed. This is what a developer is extremely well able to manage, the construction schedule through their contractors. The point here is we need to look out for the best interest of the neighborhood and the city. And we do not see any argument here. How is the city benefiting from just simply saying, oh, just let them tear them down? There's no benefit here to the community or to the city. In fact, and staff haven't even suggested a course of action here. They're opening the whole thing to you as council, without really giving you much advice, which I find very surprising as well.
So, and what do you see as our ability to force them to rent it out? We can stop the permit for sure, the demolition, I believe, we stop that. But to force them to rent out the units, you see what power do you see there?
Well, I think the idea was to bring the housing secretariat into this and have them get involved and advise you as council on how to proceed with regard to moving forward on an interim use. We certainly.
What's the ability to force them?
I don't know. That would be housing secretariat would be very well aware of the issues there, I'm sure.
Right. Okay. So you're not sure of any ability of council to force that. Last question. Are you familiar of some apartment type townhouse? Well, it's an apartment really, buildings on Moccasin Trail in Ward 16, just off Don Mills Road. Are you familiar with those?
Yes.
That have actually been abandoned. There are a couple people in one building, and we can't force the developer to do anything. But now we have these buildings in disrepair, actually falling down. You're familiar with that situation, yeah?
I'm not sure who owns them. Are these in private ownership or the?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Councillor Chernos-Lynn.
Thank you. Jeff, I thank you for your deputation. How many, as part of FONTRA and your knowledge in the area right around where this development is slated to go, how many vacant lots are there that are sitting empty because residential units have been, and some mixed use or commercial have been torn down and there's nothing happening?
Well, around Leaside, if you look at 1837, 1845 across the road, there were 5 large suburban type lots that are now, the whole thing is just a wasteland. The owner has not come back and sodded it as they were required to do under the agreement, because they came back twice to council and you did approve them taking those down. The second site is the Sunnybrook site. That never did come to council. I assume that was because it was a commercial site rather than a residential site. And so approval of council was not required to demolish the Sunnybrook Plaza with all its, 20 retail stores. That's now, and it's not even a parking lot. And we met with Concert Properties and said, why don't you, actually have a, paid parking in there? And that hasn't happened, at least not to this point. Another location is at Randolph and Millwood, where there was a well-known clothes cleaning establishment, which was commercial, didn't require approval. The development application is sitting there. It's never progressed. And so again, you're getting another wasteland site in a very, in the heart of Leaside. I'm quite concerned about further down on Bayview at Davisville, where we're in danger of having that site has been purchased and approved, but nothing is happening. It's got a temporary use in there. At least it is right now a temporary use for the lighting store.
So you would generally say that this is a challenge.
So I mean, this is happening all over Leaside.
So you would generally say then that this is a challenge, that buildings are being prematurely perhaps torn down and then sitting vacant as a result of the way we're approaching this.
Well, and this is just Leaside. This is happening across the city, and it seems to me that the city needs to start looking at this as a policy matter that is of concern.
Thank you.
The vibrancy of our neighborhoods are being, upset by wire fences and just nothing happening and litter accumulating, billboards, signs.
Okay.
It's just very downstreaming for the community.
Thanks, Jeff. I just have one further question. You know the area well. Are these townhouses in good condition in your estimation right now?
Oh, they're in excellent condition.
Okay.
The people there, they were only built in the 1990s. Like they were only built 25 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chernos-Lynn. Any other questions for the deputant? No? Okay, thank you very much. Jeff, we'll bring in committee questions for staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have questions for the deputant, Councillor Carroll?
No, for staff.
Oh, Councillor Carroll, questions for staff.
Yeah, and I think it's further to what the deputant was trying to get at. But I'm just wondering because staff have written in this report that the reason the applicant is asking to demolish right now is not because they want to build, but just because they want to do geothermal testing. And I'm perplexed by that because, I've had applications in my own neck of the woods where the plan of the eventual building was to have geothermal heating and cooling, and they just had to stick a pole in the ground wherever there was ground and figure it out that way. They didn't have to demolish all the buildings and have the whole site to figure that out. Was that discussion had with the applicant?
Through the chair, that was not a discussion that happened with the applicant.
So even like even the EP Taylor Mansion, where the Canadian Film Center is, they have a geothermal system in the front yard. We told them you can't demolish any trees, and you got to figure out whether or not it will happen, and you'll have to dig in under the road in front of the mansion, but save the trees to get down there. And they just came in and stuck spikes in the ground where there was area, and came back with an evaluation to do it. So I'm a little perplexed by that. Also, because of the nature of our format, and I was trying to hunt down the application, we know they're studying for geothermal because they do intend to build something there, but I can't look at the application. Do we have any outstanding? I understand they actually have gone through the NOAC process, and so that's usually an indication that they are. Building is imminent. Can we be more clear about that than the format of the report allows?
So through the chair, it's David Sitt here from planning. So when the application was going through the rezoning process, and it was a matter that was settled at the OLT, it was through the discussions that there would be geothermal being provided here in this building. In terms of the site plan application, the site plan application is not approved yet. So right now it is only in the second circulation for the site plan, so it is not approved yet. But the plans are showing that geothermal at this point in time. I think what I also wanted to say was, attached to this report is a letter from the consultants that are doing the testing. So I think to your point, whether or not they can just, drill individual boreholes around the property as opposed versus.
That's the word I was looking for. Boreholes.
The boreholes, instead of tearing down the entire house or houses. I think that's probably a better question for them, whether or not it's about drilling the holes or actually being able to navigate their equipment on a clean site. And so that's probably a question for them to best answer.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions for staff, Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Chernos-Lynn?
Councillor Burnside has a question. I'm happy to let him go first, and then I can go at the end
Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
questions for
Okay,
staff.
very gracious of you. Councillor Burnside?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just trying to, whatever the local councillor wants is fine, but I'm just trying to understand what power the city has and doesn't have in terms of forcing a landowner to rent out their units. Obviously, we have a vacant home tax, but even that, how would that work given where they are in the process? Does the vacant home tax even apply, given where they are in the application process?
Through the chair, I can't answer the question about the vacant home tax, I'm afraid. My understanding is that they're not that far along the site plan process. But to answer the first part of your question, there is no ability for the city to compel the owners to tenant the properties.
So to go down that proverbial road a little more, they could theoretically just leave the units vacant and put up hoarding, could they? Hello?
Sorry, Councilor Burnside, we couldn't hear your question.
Oh, let me, sorry, I'll do it again. Could they theoretically then leave the units vacant and either put up hoarding or not, even though they're not demolishing?
They could certainly leave the units vacant. Whether the putting up of hoarding would create other problems from MLS's perspective, I'm unsure about. There may be other staff who can answer that. And my understanding is that
Okay, so
sorry, sir. The vacant home tax, giving it a quick read, I think would apply.
okay, so that's our lever, if you will. Is anyone familiar with Moccasin Trail and Greenbelt Drive at Ward 16? Other than Councillor Carroll, I think she just drives around. I think she just drives around the city. But
I'm going to be a
Friday
cab
night,
driver when I retire.
are any staff familiar with that? Are you okay? Let me ask it a different way. Are you familiar with these buildings that are 3 stories? We were unable to force the landlord to rent them. Actually, it's Councilman Wong. They eventually everyone vacated. They were allowed to get in disrepair. Hoarding was forced to be put up because of the danger to the public. And so now that what's living there are rats and partiers and all those other things. Are you familiar with that? Sort of an unintended consequence, a noble idea to put folks in there at affordable rates or whatever, but without that mechanism to force the landlord to do that. Are you familiar with this situation, which now the developer has gone bankrupt, and now the whole thing is in a holding pattern? Is anyone on staff familiar with that? If not, that's okay.
So through the chair, I'm not familiar with that particular site. However, that is a common reason that we do get requests for residential demolition permits.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Burnside. Councillor Chernos-Lynn, did you have questions? Okay.
Thank you. So, through the chair, I just want to clarify then to staff. Just based on a quick reading, it does appear as though the vacant home tax would be levied if these homes were kept vacant for an extended period of time, whereas it would not apply if they were torn down, if they were demolished, and then the land sat empty.
Through you, that's my quick reading. I would have to come back with a more fulsome response, but a quick reading suggests that there is a grace period if repairs or renovations are ongoing, or if the land has transferred ownership in the same calendar year. But generally speaking, Councillor, what you've put out is what I think is correct, that there is the tax could be payable if the homes are there and not if they're torn down.
Okay, thank you. And at what stage in the process, like if we don't do this early demolition permit, could staff clarify at what stage in the process the city typically would issue a building and development permit?
So through the chair, what I have seen happen in some cases, because there have been these similar type demolition permits happening all throughout North York, and sometimes the local councillors will refuse the demolition permit and have it resubmitted later on in the process, usually to time the site plan approval, to make sure that the site plan approval has proceeded much further down the path so that you're much closer to actual construction happening. So just so that in a lot of cases you're not leaving a giant hole sitting there for an indefinite period of time. So I have seen that happen in the past.
Okay, thank you very much. And then have we ever, to anyone's knowledge, have we ever done an assessment of how much, this would be a question for staff. I suspect you can't answer this, but just because I'm new, I'm going to ask this question. Has anyone ever done a study on how much vacant home tax we're potentially losing with the early demolition of buildings that then sit empty?
Through the chair, not to my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you, Councillor Chernos-Lynn. Any other questions? Speakers? Councillor Chernos-Lynn, what is your plan with the file?
So I would like to do a motion to deny this request for the demolition the early demolition permit. My concern is really like I understand the concerns that are raised about properties that go into disrepair. I don't think we're there with this. These are really pristine townhomes, and I fear that we're in a cycle where unfortunately, a lot of condo development has stalled, and as a result, sites are sitting dormant. And what I'm really concerned about is the effect of that when we're having these early. I'm seeing with considerable regularity that we're allowing buildings to be prematurely torn down, and then because of a variety of factors, things aren't being built on the sites, and we have very little leverage to encourage that development to happen in a more timely fashion. And, sometimes some of those steps may be, we've created them perhaps at the city because we allow the building permit to be, the demolition permit to be done quickly and then early, and then there's still many steps to go through and lots of hurdles to jump through in order to get to NOAC. But we have the opportunity here to actually say, no, you know what? You wait until it's a more timely fashion because there isn't a good enough reason to do this early. And I do worry that one of the impacts of the early demolition permits that have been granted is that people are being encouraged to move out of their homes early when they don't necessarily need to. And as we hear from so many tenants and homeowners that they're having to vacate, that is causing considerable stress to them. And so I think this is one of the few carrots we can put out to actually encourage developers to get their ducks in a row and do it at the appropriate time. And also, I think we're probably leaving significant vacant home tax on the table potentially. I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happening here, but it seems like one of the unintended consequences perhaps for the city. And so I would just like to see better timing alignment of this, and I think people don't want these empty lands. And so while I know there's going to be progress, and I know there's going to be development, and I, in some ways welcome development, I just think we need to get the timelines working better and not see all these empty lots around neighborhoods. And yet I understand the concerns raised by my colleague, Councillor Burnside, about buildings getting into disrepair. I just don't think that's an issue here. So I hope my colleagues will support this, and I'm actually interested in pursuing some of these issues from a policy perspective a little bit more in another venue. Obviously not for today, but long term, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chernos-Lynn. Councillor Cheng?
Yes, I support my councillor colleague in her statements, as well as the desire to change policy and how we can encourage the use of existing housing. We are in a housing crisis. We see this visibly across our city, and we don't want to create an environment where it's easier to just let the house rot, which is, I think, what is happening across our city, where when the applicant comes forward, we don't want to allow, are forced to allow the demolition prematurely because of the site conditions and the impact on the surrounding community. I hope that, I don't know if the applicant is listening to this, but they would consider reaching out to the many refugee serving organizations across our city. They are always looking for emergency housing. And the benefit to developers of that model is that, because I think one of the reasons developers don't want to be landlords is they don't want to deal with the land and tenant board when it comes to having to do an eviction. And if you partner with a refugee serving organization to provide emergency housing support, and all of these tenants would be supported through these agencies. It has been done in my ward where it's a win-win. There's a little bit of money, your house is maintained, your property is maintained, and you are actually contributing to a solution to a problem that the city is facing. And so we hope that the applicants would consider reaching out to the many refugee claimant serving organizations across our city that are doing great work and partnering with many developers to create housing opportunities in these sites that are awaiting development. So those are my final thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Chair. We already have a number of policies that sort of speak to this. I just want to point out, vacant home tax isn't really one of them. Vacant home tax really isn't meant as a revenue tool. So, I'm not worried about the loss of revenue tax or vacant home tax, because what we want is for revenue services to collect fewer dollars in VHT and the units to be used as housing. And there's a range of options. Councillor Cheng has just suggested one. You could even, where these are, and Councillor Burnside's right, I just drive around endlessly, so I know these ones kind of well, because I used to shop at that Metro just south of it. But these would make excellent Airbnbs in the short term. We have lots of things you could do with these in the condition until you do have a site plan approval and a NOAC. None of those things seem to have been explored here. You can test for geothermal and then figure out who's going to be housed here and for how long. This is even a neighborhood in North Toronto where it's not unusual for there to be what are called short-term corporate rentals. A company wants to bring someone into town to do some project that is 2 years long. So they bring the folks over from the London office and they need a place to live. And it's not uncommon for them to look at new builds in North Toronto. There are lots of options here that a rental realtor agent could help you with. Our own set of policies could help you with in terms of how this could be used as housing in the short term. Because we don't want, in the middle of what is a great neighborhood, a vacant lot to suddenly be vacated, and even with conditions and hoarding around it, have it sit there in this prime area empty for, it's not uncommon. People say they're in a terrible hurry, and then you put up the hoarding, and 7 years later, you're still looking at a vacant lot in your ward. And so I'm going to support the councillor's motion, but, a quick sit down with housing policy staff, and they would be willing to go over all the options that could be exercised in the short term so that the overall neighborhood around these buildings continues to look and feel stable, and then proceed with your construction. One day you are going to proceed with construction. You're going to want these neighbors around you to be your friends. And if they've been looking at an eyesore vacant lot, they're not going to be too happy about it. If there's been some vibrancy and some vitality going on there over the long stretch of getting to building permit phase, I have a feeling they'll be a little more amenable to the disruption of construction that will take place temporarily. So I support the councillor's motion and look forward to seeing what happens as a result of denying it. They may come forward and then we'll get a really clear picture of what their short-term intentions are. And we may see this back here with a better reason to approve. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I just have a couple of comments. When you prematurely tear down homes, and actually, there's some wonderful pictures online as part of this report showing the interior of at least one of these homes, and it's actually a shame that they're being torn down and a shame that they're vacant. But when you tear down and the site becomes vacant for years, you run into all kinds of problems. You run into arguments over grass cutting. You run into arguments over litter and debris that's being thrown over the fence. And of course, you run into problems with animals. And it creates there's a cascading of problems that are created, in addition to losing the potential for these to be rentals or Airbnbs. I have had a situation in which we did want vacant bungalows, taken down along Sheppard Avenue, just to the west of Bathurst. But these were falling apart, and they were rat infested. People were going in there and lighting fires. They were a danger to the community. So we gave them an early demolition application because of community safety issues. I don't see that here. I see an opportunity to rent these out. I would urge the local councillor to report these addresses to our vacant home tax enforcement units to see whether they filed their forms accurately, to see whether anyone's in any of these units, and if they are vacant and the rules of the tax apply, they should pay. And that's really the one incentive we have to make sure that vacant units are rented out. So with that, I'll be supporting the local councillor and the refusal motion. There we go. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we're approaching lunch hour. Is there a consensus to continue to finish? We're close to the end. That's a consensus? Okay, so we have a motion on the screen. Let's see one. So we're going to complete the agenda. Is everyone's okay with that? We can put it to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, item 21.6, 115 York Mills Road. Application to remove a private tree. I have two deputants. Shadia Kashai. Riza Shams? No? Okay. Questions for staff?
I have a question.
Councillor Cheng?
It looks like a beautiful tree, and I'm just wondering, is there something wrong with it? Why the applicant would want this to be removed?
Through the chair, in that regard, I would let our report stand for itself. The applicant's reasons for seeking the removal have to do with future risk and concerns with the tree damaging the foundation, and our report comments on our response to those.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Speakers? We need a decision.
So I would move to deny the request, seeing as we haven't heard from the applicant and the tree is reported in good condition and maintainable.
Okay. So you're moving staff recommendations.
Correct.
Okay. Any other speakers on the item? No? Okay. The local councillor is moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Does GC have motions for that? Okay. So we have, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's Wilson Avenue Safety Review. I think I spoke earlier about the tragedies that have happened over the years on this small set of roadway between Bathurst and Wilson Heights on Wilson Avenue. Some fatalities, very serious injuries, hospitalizations, collisions, off-ramps, a whole series of traffic management issues, including the Wilson subway station, where hundreds of buses enter onto Wilson Avenue from Wilson Heights every day, the 401 off-ramps, and so forth. So Councillor Cole has moved amendments, if we can put them on the screen. Okay, so just to explain, just south of the 401 bridge over Bathurst Street, there's a 401 eastbound on-ramp. And it's also a very busy pedestrian corridor where people are trying to cross. So I've tried to cross that on my own for many years, and I'm sort of running for my life when I do. So we're looking at other safety measures there. There was a pictograph and I believe an amber light at that location. Whether we can enhance that or not, I don't know. Rumble strips, anything we do on the ramp is provincial jurisdiction is problematic. It takes a long time. If it's on city property, I think it's a little easier. We can move this, or if you have questions to staff, I'm fine with it because that crosswalk is a very risky area where you've got pedestrians crossing at a 401 on-ramp. You want to hold it for quite, okay. Councillor Cole?
I thought we were going to include something in reference to looking at the overall safety of trucks in the area.
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to do a motion to that
That's what we
effect.
agreed to.
Was there a motion for that effect? Yeah, I mean, it's made clear that it's sort of beyond the scope of community council, but if you wanted to. But did you write something up?
Yes. Yeah, without the procurement stuff, it's just the trucks.
It's just, so what else do you want to have?
Then also look at the safety of heavy trucks in the area.
Safety.
James, just looking at the general idea of the trucks in the air, because they're all coming off the ramps too, and there's going to be more with the development there.
Right. No, I fully agree. And this latest fatality was a dump truck that came off the ramp. I'm assuming, I believe it was a right-hand turn onto Wilson, and this lady was crossing southbound at the crosswalk, signalized intersection.
Yeah, it was an 80-year-old.
So this guy didn't stop, right? Like he barreled off the ramp.
Probably didn't see her.
No. I don't know how you can see anything. I don't know how you can see anything from these dump trucks.
Oh, they can't see it. And they don't give a damn.
All right, so we have two amendments, really. Oh, I see. Okay, so, all right, I don't know. Does this wording, Councillor Cole, take a look at this wording. Does this capture what you're looking for? Yeah, okay. All righty. Okay, so motions on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that concludes the main agenda item. We're just going to do the bills. Councillor Chernos-Lynn, would you like to do the confirming bills? So general bills, sorry.
Sure, thank you. That Bills 110 and 111 prepared for the February 19th, 2025 meeting 21 of the North York Community Council be declared as bylaws and passed subject to Section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Confirming bills. Councillor Cole?
That conformity bills, conformatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority of meeting 21 on February 19, 2025 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to decision 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006. I so move.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Well, that concludes our business for today. Thank you very much to city staff, members of the public and deputants, councillors, clerk staff, and councillor staff. Enjoy the rest of the day.